Hey friends, welcome back to this homeschooling naturopath. If you're new here, my name's Hannah and I'm a homeschooling mom of 3 girls and a newborn baby. My girls are 11, 9, and 7. And I'm also a fully qualified naturopath living in New Zealand. On this channel, I like to share content related to homeschooling, homemaking, motherhood, as well as some naturopathic info throughout some of my content here. Today's video, I am bringing you guys our birth story. Baby has indeed arrived, and I just wanted to sit down and share with you guys our birth story while it's still semi-fresh in my mind. So if you're interested, keep watching. So yes, for anyone who was wondering, our baby did arrive safe and sound. By the time I'm filming this, baby is already gonna wake up and cry as soon as I sit down to film, maybe. Baby is already 3 weeks old today by the time I'm sitting down to film this. And honestly, the main reason is just because I haven't really found the opportunity to sit down and film. I think in my mind I was picturing myself looking all glamorous and, you know, having my hair done and my makeup done and my bed made nicely, but that's just not realistic when you have a newborn baby. So I was like, okay, I just need to actually sit down and get this filmed. So as many of you might know, the gender of this baby was a surprise to us, and I am very excited to announce to you all that it is a boy. For anyone who was patiently waiting to see what the gender was, like we were, it's a little boy and his name is Abel. He was born on May 19th at 2:36 a.m. So as you can imagine, we were pretty overjoyed when he was born and we got to meet him and see for the first time that he was a little boy. So how our birth story started off, rewinding way back, by the time you guys see this, it's going to seem like a really long time ago because it'll be at least a month since he was born by the time I post this video. So rewinding way back to May 18th, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was almost exactly 3 a.m. when I woke up that morning, and I started having, I was having very mild, very inconsistent, very on and off contractions on that morning when I woke up, you know, which wouldn't have worried me, and you know, it definitely wasn't something I would bother the midwife about. However, what was abnormal for me and my past births was that there was some bleeding involved. And that is something I've never experienced before with any of my girls. So I don't know, the contractions went on and off for quite a few hours, but by about 9 a.m. when my husband woke up and I told him about it and I told him about the bleeding, he was like, okay, you need to call the midwife and tell her about it and ask her what she thinks. And of course I was a little bit worried, right, because I'm Googling things, you know, as you do, and I'm reading about like uterine ruptures and you know, the placenta detaching and all sorts of crazy things. But when I called the midwife at 9 that morning, she wasn't worried. She was like, it's probably just the bloody show, which, you know, TMI, but you know, you're here for the birth story. So that's the reality of the whole thing. She wasn't worried, which was really good and very reassuring to me. But you know, she obviously just wanted me to keep her posted on how things progressed. So that whole day, May 18th, which was a Sunday, I just had very inconsistent on and off contractions, like, and not even painful. I wouldn't even call them contractions. I mean, obviously they were, but you know, yeah, nothing like real labor contractions, right? Obviously it was early labor. I didn't go to church with the family that morning, obviously because of the bleeding and, you know, kind of anticipating that things would amp up at some point soon. So I stayed home by myself while the family went off to church and kind of carried on the normal Sunday things, you know, when I picked up the groceries and all of that. I really was just trying to find things to occupy myself with. I was very much just trying to stay on my feet as much as possible, I don't know, I cooked up a huge batch of soup. I made some sourdough banana muffins for the midwives. You know, here picturing like it's gonna be a long night and, you know, we're all gonna hunker down for the whole rest of the day while I have this baby. You know, I was like prepping little snacks for the midwives and you know, just getting things organized. But being very, very mindful that I wanted to stay on my feet. That was kind of my goal, which, you know, in hindsight, maybe that wasn't the best idea. I'm sure if I asked my midwife, she would have been like, no, you should try and rest while you can. But that wasn't where my mindset was. I was very focused on trying to get labor progressing faster. As I said, these contractions I was having on that Sunday, May 18th, really were not, yeah, like nothing to get excited about. Do you know what I mean? I was fairly confident though that, you know, something would happen by the end of the night. I was like, surely once the sun goes down, you know, then, you know, and the melatonin starts to kick in, you know, then labor will really get started. But the sun went down and nothing had changed with these contractions. You know, we had dinner as usual. We actually went for a big family walk that afternoon, which was nice, you know, to try and get things moving along. I was like racing my 7-year-old across the park to see who could run faster. I couldn't run very fast, but you know, I tried. So by the time, you know, the sun went down and I had been trying everything I could, you know, bouncing on the yoga ball, doing all the exercises that the chiropractor had given me, you know, using all the essential oils. I made up a labor massage oil that had a whole lot of clary sage in it, which I was rubbing on my tummy pretty often. Yeah, like doing all the things to try and get these contractions to become stronger, and nothing happened. So yeah, had a shower, went to bed as usual. I went to bed around 9. I was pretty tired, to be honest, probably because I was on my feet all day trying to start the labor. So yeah, went to bed around 9, pretty disappointed, and also, you know, slightly concerned because I had been bleeding all day. You know, from 3 a.m. that morning I had this little bit of blood, which again, you know, my midwife had kind of put my mind at ease, but obviously it was in the back of my mind. You know, it was something that I was genuinely concerned about. At almost exactly 11 p.m. that same night, you know, just a couple of hours later, I got woken from my sleep with quite a painful contraction. And this was like a contraction. It felt quite different from the little ones I'd been having all day. And so you know, it was strong enough to wake me from my sleep type of contraction. And then another one came, you know, about 5 to 7 minutes later, and then another one. And so I opened up my little contraction timer on my phone. I think I was using the Baby Center one on the app, the Baby Center app that I had. The baby's snoring. I wonder if the camera can pick it up. And I started timing them. And at this point, after about 4 or 5, I was like, okay, this is go time. These are consistent, strong contractions. Like I said, they were much stronger than I had been experiencing all day. And so around sometime, maybe around 20 past 11 or around 11:30, I got up out of bed. My husband was already asleep. And I got up and just started taking our home birth stuff out to the living area, to our lounge. You know, I rolled out the yoga ball and I turned my essential oil diffuser on, and I just started putting stuff where I knew the midwife would be able to easily find it. You know, I laid out the baby's outfit for after, and I laid out my outfit and, you know, the bathing suit I wanted to wear in the pool. I put it on, as a matter of fact. I got like all my little get up on. Oh, and in case also I haven't mentioned, we were planning a water birth. And so before I went to bed at 9, I spoke to my husband. I said, how much time do you need to fill up the pool? Now, in regards to the pool, we had made the decision beforehand to not use all of our hot water from like the tank in our house. We don't have gas hot water here in our home. It's all electric, and I was mindful that I wanted to take a hot shower after the birth, and so we made the decision beforehand that we weren't going to use the hot water from the cylinder. So what he would do would be to fill the birth pool with mainly cold water and then boil a whole lot of pots and boil the kettle and all of that to fill the pool. And so before I went to bed, I you know, rechecked in with him. I was like, how long do you think you need to fill the pool? And he told me 2 hours. Around midnight, I was like, oh, okay, maybe it's time to wake my husband up. He told me he needed 2 hours to fill the pool. These contractions are getting a lot stronger. They're coming like, again, every 5 to 7 minutes, but they're lasting a lot longer at this point. And so I was like, okay, at midnight, it's time to wake him up to fill the pool. So that's what I did. So midnight, which was now May 19th, I woke him up and he just got immediately started filling up the birth pool. And for a while, I, again, was just pottering around doing random stuff. I was like straightening out books on the homeschool shelf. I was dusting stuff. I actually, I don't know what I was doing, but I was walking around, you know, trying to be helpful where I could. My darling husband, he had, I don't know how many pots, maybe about 6 pots. No, it can't have been 6, 5. It would have been 5 pots plus the kettle going all at one time. He had all the 4 burners on our stovetop, the kettle, and then he also had turned on the barbecue outside on our deck to boil another pot. So he was very busy, he was very occupied, and I was kind of just standing around, you know, just letting the contractions come, timing them whenever they came, you know, and just trying to keep myself busy. And that was fine, that was all good and well, until about 1 a.m. And at, you know, prior to 1 a.m. I could still walk around through the contractions, I could still very much talk, and I was still walking around, you know, pottering around, and I could still move while I was having them. But by 1 a.m. I was having to now stop and lean against something. I actually stood and leant against our homeschool shelf. You probably don't know exactly how tall our homeschool shelf is, but it's probably the tallest shelf we have out in the living space. You know, it's kind of it's a little bit shorter than me, so I was just kind of leaning against it, you know, putting my head down, swaying side to side when those contractions started coming around 1. They were coming fast and furious. They were, at that point, 1 a.m., they were every 5 minutes and lasting almost a minute long, the majority of them. And so my husband was getting a little bit concerned. He could obviously tell that I was no longer just walking around, pottering around, trying to help him. He could obviously tell that I had, you know, I was in a bit more pain than I had been. And so at 1 a.m. he told me to call the midwife, and again, oh my gosh, like it's 1 in the morning, you know, and I'm standing there like, oh, you know, I've been having these on and off contractions all day. What if this isn't real labor? Oh, I don't want to wake someone from their sleep. That's the worst. You know, and we went back and forth on it. He's like, babe, like this is our midwife. She gets this all the time. It's time to call her. So at 1 a.m. I called the midwife and let her know what was going on, and she was like, okay, great, I'll mosey over, you know, call me back if anything changes really quickly and I need to get there much faster. Now, in the time that I called her, to the time she arrived at 1:30, the contractions had gotten so much more powerful that I was now not just standing leaning against something, but I was actually down on the ground, on our lounge floor, on my hands and knees, but also swaying with the yoga ball. That is something that I really like during labor, just on my knees and then resting my upper body on the yoga ball and just kind of swaying side to side. That's probably my favorite like coping mechanism, I would say, a form of pain management that I like to utilize throughout labor. She arrived at 1:30 and by that point I really couldn't, I didn't even really acknowledge when she arrived, and I think pretty quickly she realized how far along we were in this labor. She did suggest to me when she arrived that we check my cervix to actually see how far dilated I was, and initially I wasn't too keen on the idea. I don't know. I just I knew that things are moving fast, and I didn't really feel like I needed the reassurance, but after we spoke about it a little, we decided that I'd go ahead with it. So she checked my cervix then when she arrived at 1:30. And at that point, I was already about 5 centimeters dilated. you know, which was great, which was reassuring to hear. I was definitely happy about that. From there, I really just tried to focus on letting the contractions come and relaxing through them. Again, down on my knees with the yoga ball. You know, my husband's still, he's working hard. He might be working harder than I am at this point. Honestly, just back and forth constantly with pots of hot water. And I say back and forth because our living area is right in the middle of the deck and the kitchen. And so he had a pot boiling on the barbecue, which was on the deck, and the birth pool's near me and the kitchen's on the other side, so he's like constantly back and forth to the barbecue, to the pool, to the kitchen, to the pool, to the barbecue. Just yeah. And my midwife was busy setting up all of her stuff. Here in New Zealand, if your midwife offers home birth, they will come to your house with pretty much a whole hospital. She comes with everything you need for yourself as well as your baby, for all possibilities. If your baby needs to be resuscitated or anything like that, she has a whole section that she sort of sets up in order for all that stuff to be there. Thankfully, we've never had to use that, but she does bring absolutely everything you need in case of an emergency, you know, which is very reassuring if you're interested in having a home birth yourself here in New Zealand. Midwives who offer home births do, I'm pretty sure by law, have to have all of that stuff. And it is stuff that they actually own themselves. So that's the reason not all midwives offer home birth, because it's a huge financial, what's the word I'm looking for? Financial, I don't know, you guys. Baby brain is real. Do you guys know your brain shrinks when you have a baby? It's crazy. And also I haven't slept much. So anyways, you know what I'm saying. You understand what I mean. Investment. That's the word I was looking for. It just came to me. A financial investment to buy all this stuff. Okay, yeah. Anyways, moving on. So she was busy doing that. My husband was busy and I was just down on the floor focusing. And at some point just before 2 a.m. I was just feeling like I needed to go be by myself for a little bit. And you know, it's not that the area was chaotic or anything like that, but I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking, but I just wanted to go be by myself. And so I went to the toilet and I went and sat on the toilet for what seemed to me, and I don't know for sure, and my husband doesn't remember either, but it felt like a good 20 minutes that I was sitting on the toilet. And it probably was because I had at least 4 or 5 big contractions while I was sitting on the toilet. Sitting on the toilet during labor actually is very, very helpful to relax your pelvic floor and actually help things move down a bit quicker, because, you know, naturally when we sit on the toilet, that's where things are used to relaxing. So I actually think having gone to do that was really helpful as far as moving things along a lot quicker. So I had a good 4 or 5 contractions sitting there, and when I came out of the toilet and I walked through the kitchen where my husband was, he said something to me, and it was probably something, you know, like, are you okay? Or, you know, do you need anything? How are you doing? I actually don't remember what he said, but he said something to me when I walked through the kitchen. And in the moment, and this is going to sound mean, but in the moment when he spoke, I immediately felt like irritated and confused and anxious is how I was feeling in that moment walking through the kitchen. And I didn't reply to him. Like I said, I don't even remember what he said. But the way I felt in that moment made me recognize that I was probably in transition. And if you maybe are, you know, watching this and you're getting ready to have your first baby, transition is when you go from, when your body tries to change from opening the cervix contractions to now pushing the baby out contractions. And for me, based on previous labors that I've had, this being baby number 4, I know that I get very confused and irritated and anxious come transition time. That is something that I remember well from my previous home birth with my last baby. It's just outright confusion and annoyance with everybody in the vicinity. And it's not, you know, I'm not trying to sound mean, That's just, your body just gets a little bit confused in trying to change what it's doing in that moment. So when he spoke, I actually recognized that I was in transition. I knew it based on how I felt all of the sudden, and it was very sudden. It was like, okay, now I'm anxious, now I'm irritated, I feel confused, I need to go lie down. So I went and I kneeled down in front of the fireplace. I was a little bit cold after having been in the toilet for so long. And the very first contraction I had when I knelt down felt like a pushy contraction. And so I definitely was in transition when I walked through the kitchen, you know, a few seconds prior. Yeah, so that very first contraction I had when I sat down was a pushy one, and I said that to my midwife. What she had done while I was in the toilet was actually set up a little area where I had been kneeling previously with the yoga ball. She put down like the waterproof liner and all these puppy pads, and sort of set up my yoga ball so that I could, you know, so obviously she knew, she could see that this was moving very quickly, and, you know, she was thinking ahead. Anyways, when that pushy contraction came, she was like, okay, do you want me to move all of this waterproof stuff here in front of the fire, or do you want to go back to that little area that I set up for you? And we made the decision that I would move back to the area she'd set up because I was getting a bit hot in front of the fire. And at that point it must have been maybe like 2:15 in the morning, I would say, sometime around there. I don't really know for sure. And the pushy contractions just kept on coming. I was waiting, I was very much waiting to get into the birth pool. You know, that was the plan. We'd planned to have this beautiful water birth. I've never had a water birth before, and that was, you know, very much the plan that we had all discussed and were on board with, and my husband was working hard to fill the pool. But yeah, when I went and knelt down in that nice little area my midwife had set up on the floor, that was it. I wasn't moving again, and I just started to go to work through these pushy contractions. And, you know, I'm in the zone, like, I'm not fully present with what's going on around me, but I could hear my midwife and my husband going back and forth in regards to the birth pool. And my darling husband, he was like desperate for me to get in the pool, you know, and I could hear him like kind of pleading with the midwife. He's like, no, but look, like, look, it's warm, you know, feel it. I've got one more pot here, I've got another pot there, it's almost ready. Like, you know, surely when that pot goes in, it'll be ready. And in his defense, the pool was full. I never actually felt the water, but I trusted that he strongly felt like it was warm enough. But my midwife was like, no, I'm sorry. It's not going to be warm enough for a baby. It needed to be a particular temperature in order for me to get in. Yeah, and I could hear, you know, I could hear the whole back and forth of my husband kind of pleading with her, to let me get in. But yeah, she put her foot down and was like, no, it's not warm enough for a baby. And that was that. I think when he realized that I wasn't going to be getting in, that's when he stopped with all the pots, and he came and knelt down in front of me for a contraction or two. And then, you know, both of us were kind of like, wait, we need to go wake the girls up. All of our girls wanted to be present when the baby was born. It was something that, again, we had all spoken about prior. Before they all went to bed, they were like, make sure to wake us up if anything happens. So it was kind of like a light bulb moment. You know, my husband and I both were like, wait, we can't do this yet. The girls aren't up. So he quickly went and woke them all up. And they all sat around me while I pushed, and in total, I'm pretty sure I only pushed maybe 4 or 5 times, and he was born. My midwife has written down that I pushed for 2 minutes, and that was it, and he was born. My husband caught him. He you know, and it's funny too, because I was kind of, you know, I was down on the floor, you know. I'm sorry, it's also very dark in here now. It's a very cloudy, rainy day outside, and I don't have my ring light in here, and it was too much effort to go down to the garage to find my ring light. I'm sorry, if you're still here listening, you're a true one. what was I saying? Oh yeah, so I'm just kind of on the floor by myself from what I felt, because everybody else was like behind me. They obviously wanted to all see what was going on, and my midwife of course is behind me, and my husband's behind me because he's getting ready to catch the baby. All the girls are behind me watching. So I kind of, I don't know, I did feel slightly alone in that moment. I'm just kind of on my hands and knees looking at the floor, and there's no, as far as I was aware, in my vision, there was no one around. So that was a little bit disappointing, but anyway, everyone had a job that they were doing anyways. So my husband went to catch him, and he's very proud of himself. He says that he caught him and he didn't even drop him. So he's pretty impressed with himself. I don't remember, with our last two babies, he didn't catch either of them because with our last home birth, he was holding my hands the whole time. And then with our number 2 daughter, he was also holding my hands the whole time. So it's only our first baby that he had caught previously, and apparently I don't know, he didn't drop her, but that's how he describes it. But I don't know, she sort of slipped onto the bed or something like that. I don't know. But he was very proud of himself that he was able to catch little baby here and not drop him, in his own words. And it was a pretty magical moment, as you can imagine. I'm in the relief that the baby is finally out, and then I hear him say it's a boy, and yeah. What an absolute magical moment. I was on my knees. Daniel passed him through my legs and I brought him up to my chest. And then in that relief, in that, moment of, thanking God, I looked around at all my girls who were all sobbing and bawling their eyes out. And really cool, my midwife got some really neat photos of that moment. I don't know that I'll share them on here because most of them are not sharing photos as far as I'm concerned. But just an absolute magical moment, and the photos, me holding him to my chest, my husband behind me with a huge smile on his face, and all the girls around me. And there's a couple of photos where I'm like looking up at them, smiling, and everyone is just, yeah. Such a special moment. So Abel was born at 2:36 a.m. I'm pretty sure, either 2:35 or 2:36. It was one of those. And he was 6 pounds 7 at birth, which is my smallest baby that I've ever had. But he was also born at 37 weeks and 6 days, which is the earliest baby I've ever had. I've spoken a little bit on here about how my babies tend to come early, but this was the earliest baby that I've had. My 2 and 3 were born at 38 weeks, and my first was born at 39. So, yeah, they just keep getting sooner and sooner, these babies. But he was on the smaller side, and actually my midwife tried to get us to go into hospital with him. Based on his size, she was a little bit concerned that maybe he would have some issues with his blood sugar. But my husband and I both felt strongly that he would be fine. I could hear him swallowing colostrum when, he first latched. We had a beautiful, special hour together after his birth where we just sat and had skin to skin and, had the first breastfeed and all of that. And my husband and I both felt very confident that, going to hospital and having his blood sugar checked every 3 hours was not the best option for us. I don't know about you, but I don't plan to have babies at home just to have to go to the hospital. And I felt very confident that, my own decision, I'm not telling you to do that, but that was the choice that we made, was to stay home. And of course, things were fine and his blood sugars were fine. So that is pretty much my birth story. I can't think of any other details that might be of interest. Home birth is so incredible in and of itself. My favorite thing, my absolute favorite thing about home birth is the fact that, first of all, my kids can be there. how absolutely incredible it is for them, particularly my oldest daughter, who, you know, is going to be 12 soon. Watching her little brother be born is something that she'll remember for the rest of her life. I'm sure they all will, but I mean, it's just so special and so magical being able to share that amongst siblings. I think that that is such a great gift to give our children, and something that they'll be able to talk about and laugh about when they're all older. Yeah, it's so special. And of course, that's something that we wouldn't be able to do, you know, were we having a hospital birth. But my second favorite thing about home birth is the fact that you just have, you know, you have your baby, and then you get to just shower and go to sleep. You get to take your shower, and you just get to take your sweet little baby to bed with you. And you know, the peacefulness that comes with that, it's like when you go to bed, all your other kids are tucked up, you know, your husband's here, everything's great, you know, and it's just the peacefulness that comes with just being able to hop back into bed. Like, this is it, this is our family now, we're all together, we're all tucked up, we're all safe, we're all healthy. Yeah, there's just such a peacefulness that comes. I can't think of another word other than peacefulness. Maybe I'll repeat it one more time. Yeah, it's very special. Unfortunately, I obviously never got to get in the pool. My poor husband, who had spent, you know, a good 2.5 hours filling it, trying to get it ready for me and the baby, then just had to empty it all out. I didn't see him empty it. I don't know how he did it, but he managed. It's funny too, because when I spoke about potential water birth, the main thing I was concerned about was all the logistics of it. You know, oh, filling the pots and, you know, emptying and filling and all the things. That's what I was concerned about. And it's funny because my husband went ahead and did all of that, and I didn't even end up getting in. Bless him. Of course, at the end of the day, regardless of how birth went or how labor went, or, you know, hospital or home, the most important thing is a healthy, happy baby and mother. And I am just incredibly thankful to God for his faithfulness and for bringing us through this, and for allowing us the opportunity to have another beautiful baby, and amongst all things, a beautiful baby boy. It's pretty incredible. I am definitely still getting used to having a baby boy. If you are like me and have only ever had daughters, you probably know what I mean. It's definitely different having a son. It still feels pretty surreal even after 3 weeks. I think too, because mentally, you know, when you're not sleeping much and you're so tired, it's kind of hard to retain information. And it just all still feels very surreal to me even after 3 weeks. So yeah, still very much getting used to everything, and, you know, getting to know each other. We've had a few hiccups as far as breastfeeding goes, and so that is something that we are still working through based on his size at birth. The fact that he was a bit smaller, and my midwife was quite concerned about his size. She strongly recommended that we give him some formula top-ups within that first week after his birth. And it's something that I'm still very much working through now. Yeah, I've got a full video coming about our breastfeeding journey. Not only him, but with my other daughters, because it's something that I have struggled with ever since our first baby. But anyway, that's for another day. But again, the most important thing is a healthy, happy baby and mother. Anyways, I will leave you guys with that. I hope that you have enjoyed listening to our birth story and meeting baby Abel for the first time. Yeah, it's pretty surreal sharing this story. I hope you guys are all doing well and staying cool if you're in the northern hemisphere and, you know, dealing with the hot weather. Down here in the southern hemisphere, we're now in our winter time, so we're trying to keep warm down here. I would appreciate some sunshine and summer weather right about now, but you know, you can't have it all. Anyways, thank you all so much for getting to the end of this video. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate your view, and I truly, truly hope that you are doing well and taking care of yourself. I will catch you in the next video. Bye!